Okay, so I would like to welcome everyone to Geography Colloquium at Harvard, April 2016. We are pleased to have Kang Wu with us. Kang is a visiting scholar at the Center for Geographic Analysis and an associate professor of urban economic geography and planning in the School of Urban Economics and Public Administration at Capital University of Economics and Business. Dr. Wu has a PhD in human geography from the Institute of Geographical Sciences and Natural Resources Research, Chinese Academy of Sciences. That's the longest alma mater I've ever heard. And with that, I'll happily turn it over to you, Kang.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for your introduction. It's a great honor for me to have this opportunity to talk about my research, especially before I finish the visiting appointment at CGA in Harvard. Today, my topic is actually, I'm very nervous to stand here because this is really a big challenge for me to speak non-stop for entire 1 hour, because this is the longest speech that I've had in my life in English. Yeah, so today my topic is about the functional urban areas in China. I think functional urban area is a very important and fundamental issue. I remember there is a famous urban geographer and also an urban planner in China, Professor Zhou Yixin from Peking University. He wrote a paper in 2006. The title is "The Primary Scientific Issue of Urban Research on China is the Correctness of Basic Urban Concepts." So, why functional urban area is a very important and fundamental issue? Because, as you all know, China is a living laboratory in urbanization and has witnessed unprecedented urban growth and spatial extension in recent decades. We can capture those information from this picture that released by NASA in 2012, which shows the night light changes from 1992 to 2009. As for the Asia patch, many regions present a significant increase, especially in China and India. But for India, if you check it a little bit more, you will observe there was still some areas went through a decrease, not to mention the South Korea and Japan. But for China, it's really hard to find those decreased pixels from this picture. So let's see the second graph to look at the pace of change and the scope of change for urbanization in China. According to the official statistics, China's total population increased from 172 million to 771 million from 1978 to 2015, which suggests the urban population share rise dramatically from less than 20% in 1978 to 40% in 2003 and exceeded 50% for the first time in 2011, finally reached up to 56% in 2015, rising by nearly 600 million. During this period, the number of administrative approved cities of all levels proliferated to 653. So this is a rapid urbanization at a glance. And this is our previous study, which from an alternative perspective on urbanization in China, we call them mushrooming jiedaos. Some of you who are familiar with China probably know jiedao is the basic administrative unit of city purpose in China. So what I'm going to highlight here is urbanization in China sometimes often involve a significant political dimension. Largely the rural settlements, for example, town or township, could be accorded with the city status. I mean, here is Jiedao, overnight by the administrative power, which further accelerate the urban process.
Question?
Yeah.
Would you like to translate 街道 into urban neighborhoods or something similar to that, so that the non-Chinese speaking community understands?
Yeah, I think Jiedao is one of the township in China.
The equivalent to township.
Yeah, it's
More
different
rural area.
names, but yeah, but Jiedao, most Jiedao are urban areas. So meanwhile, fueled by the globalization, ICT, and modern transportation, urban development in China turned into an era of space of flows and network system. Typically, the rise of higher speed railway in the past 10 years has made China become a network society. More than 50% of Chinese cities will be connected via high-speed railway by 2030. That is, this is a medium to long-term high-speed railway network planning in China from 2016 to 2030, which is released from the 13th Five-Year Planning of China. And also, for the urban system, it showed a combined characteristics in both expanded geographic scope and intensified inter-city connections. And this map presents the spatial connectivity of city networks in China based on the intercity corporate data. You can figure out some spatial patterns, like the backbone of Chinese city networks is a diamond shaped and entered by 4 metropolitan areas, which is Beijing in the north, Shanghai in the east, and Guangzhou, Shenzhen in the south, and Chengdu in the west. So we also call the city as a network of networks. After more than 30 years high-speed growth and rapid spatial expansion, the central government announced National Plan on New Urbanization in 2014, which marked a new consensus among the country's ruling elites to foster sustainable and people-centered urbanization patterns. In this plan, among the others, city clusters have been regarded as the main spatial form to support and coordinate the national urbanization and also a basic geographic unit to facilitate international competition and cooperation. So let's talk about city cluster. City clusters, we also call urban agglomeration in China, are made up group of cities, nearly contiguous cities with many adjoining satellite cities and towns. The development of city cluster in China is somewhat similar to the formation of the Megalopolis in the United States, as described by Gottman in 1961. China will make more effort to improve city clusters in the eastern region and foster new clusters and key regional cities in central and western regions, according to the Urban World Conference in 2015. And also, China is launching a series of planning to further foster 19 city clusters in the next 5 years. So this is the distribution of 19 city clusters in China, also released from the 13th Five-Year Planning of China. But how to define a city cluster in a Chinese context? Is this similar with Megalopolis in Western context? For each urban cluster, which specific cities should be included and how many populations are involved? And what kind of cities or regions can be qualified as a city cluster? Is there any criteria? Those questions has never been answered and clearly articulated via both urban policy and urban studies. Instead, increasing policy makers and researchers prefer to expand the term of city cluster in a more broader way, generalize the concept with regional urban system at different scale or the other city types, which may confuse in some situations. As we mentioned before, due to the rise of globalization and network society, more and more new spatial forms emerged. A number of city types were proposed. So let's just list those related terms together. For the left list, this is the Those are China's local terms. As you can see, it includes urban economic region or metropolitan area. Sometimes they are similar. And the second one is metropolitan coordinating region, which is introduced from Japan. And the third one is metropolitan interlocking region. And the last one is city cluster and urban agglomeration. Actually, sometimes it is really difficult to tell them apart, really confused until the government use the city cluster in their documentations. While for the Western countries, although the last four terms emerged recently, I mean the polycentric city region, global city region, mega city region, and mega regions. These are very new concepts. But the metropolitan area, as well as the megalopolis, are more common used. And this is the metropolitan and micropolitan statistical areas of the United States. So if all those metropolitan areas are interconnected with each other, that will be the megalopolis. One of the representative megalopolis in the United States is Northeast Megalopolis. So you may ask, why such a clearly definition will make confusions in China? We have to move back to talk about the definition of city, because too often we fail to ask this question. This is a very simple but fundamental question. What is a city? And how to determine what is and what is not an urban reality? I think the definition of cities, at least it should be incorporated 4 aspects. The first one is it's a physical entity, because the built city perhaps is the most familiar perception of the city, largely based on it is relatively easy to visualize. And the second one is a consumption city. It's an area within which most of the consumption of goods and services occurs in the built city. And the third one is employment city. It's an area within which most of the consumption of, it's an area which the bulk of the employed workforce works in the built city. And the last one is a workforce city. It's an area upon which the built city draws for a given majority of its labor requirements. So these 4 definitions are brought together and shown to be interrelated.
Do you want a quick question at the end, or may I ask a question now? In your definition, do you consider productivity or economic activity?
Yeah, I think actually productivity and economic activity all involved in those, especially for the consumption and employment and workforce. So, yeah. So, to understand urbanization in China, it is necessary to clarify how cities and towns are defined. In terms of the city in China, the first thing you should know is that city is an administrative unit rather than, or administrative diversion rather than an urban area. And it's usually much larger than the latter, which means city is a key unit for administrative hierarchy. And city is not just a city, actually it's a region, which involving both urban area and rural area. So the population therefore include people living in both cities and towns. There are 3 administrative levels of cities. Municipality level city, which equivalent to the province hierarchy, and the prefecture level cities, which is between province and county hierarchy. And the third level is county level city, which is equivalent to the county hierarchy. So not all the population living in cities and towns can be classified as urban population, as the rural area can also be contained within cities and towns. The urban population is defined as those who live in urban areas of cities and towns, where the lowest administrative units are residents community and villages communities. Once residence communities or villages communities are classified into urban areas of cities and towns, all their regular residents are recognized as part of the urban population. So basically, the China's urban system is composed of two parts, cities and towns. Municipality level cities and prefecture level cities are composed of municipal districts. The districts of municipal level cities are parallelized with prefecture level cities, and the districts of prefecture level cities are parallelized with county level cities according to the China's administrative hierarchy. The county level city is generally composed of sub-district, office, and towns. Towns are also part of the urban system, which are lower units than counties and county level cities. So let's see this picture. As we mentioned in the previous slide, actually, the prefectural level cities are originally from the Fu or Fucheng in Ming and Qing dynasty. Then they were reconstructed under the city controlling county system. We call them 市管县. From the late 1980s. We can see this from, this cycle, this is the boundary for our prefectural level cities. In the central, this is the urban districts of a city proper. Nearby, there are some suburban districts. And also, this is a statutory town and also some township. So, but if we look at the county level city, it will be much simple. There also is a city proper in the center, and nearby, there are some statutory town and townships. But what makes this even worse is that the criteria for administrative designations of statutory cities and towns are diverged markedly over the past 50 years. And you can see this is the basic criteria of statutory designations of cities in 1993. Basically, it includes population, economic, and public finance infrastructure dimensions. So let's just skip this. As cities and towns may include parts of rural areas, the calculation of urban population needs to first clarify spatial boundaries of urban areas in cities and towns, which is an issue of rural-urban classification. To bring China's definition of urban and rural more in line with international-based practice, the National Bureau of Statistics in 1999 released draft regulations on statistical classification of city and town area that based the definitions on two spatial characteristics of urban and rural settlements, then modified in 2006 and 2008. Each modification still uses the different criteria. So we have to admit that these regulations form the basis for defining urban populations in the 5th national census and 6th national census that operated in 2000 and 2010 respectively. And those regulations make the concept more and more close to the reality and also the functional urban area. Nevertheless, the different criteria that adopt for each modification also push the calculation of urban area and urban population into an incomparable situation, both in space and time. Then how to define and measure the functional urban area for each city become a major problem for Chinese urban studies. So I want to talk about functional urban area. Functional urban areas refers to the functional economic units consisting of higher densely populated municipalities, as well as any adjacent municipalities with higher degree of economic integration with the urban cores, measured by socio-economic activity flows. Both metropolitan area and megalopolis are typical functional urban area. China needs to define the functional urban areas in line with international practice. That's what we research, what our research aims to do. So let's just have a quick browse about the functional area, the other countries' practice about the functional urban area. The first one is the United States. The United States identified metropolitan area as core-based statistical area, CBSA, which include both metropolitan statistical area and micropolitan statistical area, differentiated by the size of core. The most recent definition was revised for the 2010 census by the Office of Management and Budget. For each CBSA, the core is defined to be the central county or counties that A, have at least 50% of their population urban areas of at least 10,000 population, or B, have within their boundaries a population of at least 5,000 located in a single urban area and at least 10,000 population. While the threshold of the core's population is 10,000 to be a CBSA, the threshold that separates metropolitan statistic area from micropolitan area is 50,000. That is the codes. And for the outlying counties are described as those adjacent territory that has a higher degree of social and economic integration, with the code as measured by commuting tiles that explicitly defined as the counties that A, at least 20% of the workers living in the county work in the central county or counties of the CBSA, or B, at least 25% of the employment in the county is accounted for the workers who reside in the central county or counties of the CBSA. A full list of all the CBSAs was published in 2013 by the OMP. So the U.S. Census Bureau's delineation method can be summarized as a population-based core threshold plus a bi-dictionary commuting threshold. The resolution of the administrative diversion in this definition is county, which is the intermediate level of the three-level administrative diversions. And in Europe, the European Spatial Planning Observation Network formulated the European equivalence of the CBSA to be the functional urban area. The definition of UA is a diversion of the morphological urban area, a dense and coherent morphological whole. The MUAS, which are the cores of the FUAs, are not selected by the absolute value of population, as the US does, but are defined to the municipality with a population density higher than 650 inhabitants per square kilometers, or a continuous combination of such municipalities. For the definition of the hinterland, ESPON did not stick with a uniform stand for all the countries, but instead discussed it by different countries. So for OECD, they also, this is OECD, they also use population density to define the codes. For the threshold, they use 1,500 inhabitants per square kilometers in Europe, Japan, Korea, and Mexico, and 1,000 was used for Canada and the United States. For the hinterland, they use a core bound 50% commuting as the threshold to incorporate a municipality into the metropolitan area. So basically, most of the functional urban area is including the core and the periphery regions. The core part is determined by population density or total population. The commuting pattern, while the commuting pattern play an overwhelming role for defining the periphery part in most of the country. So how to delineate the China's functional urban area? The first one is the basic unit. We use township, which including sub-district office in cities and towns, or townships in both cities and counties. There are more than 42,000 townships in China. Township is the basic unit for national population census. That's why we're using this as the basic unit. And we do not use the county as the basic units is because actually county is still a little bit more unit for the whole country to do this research. Especially in China, it's a big country. There's a significant difference for different regions. So that's why we're using this basic unit, township, to delineate the functional urban area in China. And the second one is data. As I mentioned in the title, we use Geographical Open data. Recent studies in urban analytics identify Geographic Open data as a promising complement to conventional. Sorry. Elena?
No, I'm sorry. I'm reading it. I'm sorry.
Okay. Authoritative data sources in understanding urban form and functions. For most developing countries that lay conventional data infrastructures, assembling existing open data from various sources seems to be a viable option. Geographic open data refers to spatial data that produced by the interaction of physical environment and human activities in Earth's surface and are openly accessible to the public, which mainly come from the three overlapping through different sources. Official data portals, big data initiatives, and the broader open data community, like volunteer geographic information data and crowdsourcing. So the increasing supply of scientific data, spearheaded by numerous open data initiatives has transformed research practices in many fields. These new waves of data initiatives are also opening up new research opportunities in urban studies and planning. Meanwhile, there seems to be a widening gap in terms of openly available data between cities in developed and developing worlds. Overcoming such gaps in data availability seems to be of higher priority for urban studies and planning in developing countries in general and China in particular. As in many developing countries, government agencies are the primary supplier of urban data in China and exercise tight data regulations for reasons such as national security. Nevertheless, the Chinese government is pushing for more open access to data via open government initiatives and loosening control of data use. There is an example that the launch of official national data. This is the National Data Center, National Bureau of Statistics of China. I think it's published in 2015. So while for urban studies, I think we propose this open urban data clearinghouse model, and it describes the three main parts for people who using open urban data to do some urban studies. The first one is the data sources that from the public and private And the second part is online data sharing and integration platform. And the third part is for the user, like researchers, policymakers, and publish, via the visualization and access to the raw data. Okay, for this research, we used various kinds of data. The first one is the tabulation on the 2010 population census in China. From this data, we can get the attribute data. And the second one is the China township boundary in 2012. We converted the boundary to polygon in ArcGIS. So we combine those data to specialize the population census data. In 2010, this is the population density for the whole China. The second part data is the public transportation data. It includes all the bus routes for the Chinese cities and the rail transit, and also the intercity transportation data. It includes highway and higher speed railway in China. So why are we using this data? The first one is defining the boundaries and the structure of a functional urban area requires current and reliable data on the type, volume, and directions of economic and social flows. The typical is commuting data. Since commuting data among cities, towns, and villages is not available in China, so proxies were used to approximate those linkages. Various transportation data are involved, which could be basically reflect the current commuting pattern in China cities. Because before 2000, China's urban region differs significantly from North American and European cases in the distribution places of residence and places of work. Private vehicular ownership is low. Regional commuter rarely yet exist, and distance to work are generally much smaller in China. So the bus route data could perfectly reflect this traditional commuter pattern. While after 2000, with the economic development, private car became popular in China, and more than 30 cities built rail transit system, and this number is still in growing. Meanwhile, both the highway and high-speed railway are constructed in China. All this makes the regional commuter possible and become a trend. So other three types data could also cover this new commuter pattern. I mean, the rail transit and the highway and high-speed railway could reflect the new tendency in China. So for the threshold we used in this research, considering the wide difference in both physical environment and economic development, we use different thresholds for those cities whose population density above 500 per square kilometers and below 500 per square kilometers. For the core area, we use 1,500 for those prefecture level cities whose population density above 1,500 per square kilometers, consistent with the threshold of urban areas that conducted in the 5th national census. For those prefecture level cities whose population density below 500 per square kilometers, we use 1,000. This is consistent with the USA threshold in OECD. For the peripheries, for those prefecture level cities whose population density above 500 per square kilometers, we use 500. And for those prefecture level cities whose population density below 500 per square kilometers, we use the average population density for those cities. Another threshold about the transportation, according to this survey that conducted in 2005, a 1 hour drive time is more possible by Chinese enterprises and office workers, most of which have access to motorized transport. While according to our research conducted in 2013 based on Beijing-Tianjin high-speed railway, 30 minutes travel time will be accepted for those who choose high-speed railway to finish their regional commute. So this is our flow chart. The first step is we include all those different kinds of data together, and we need to identify which is cores, which is peripheries, based on the population density and the transportation density. Then we need to merge those areas to identify. Of course, we will aggregate these areas to see whether their population growth reduced or increased during the 2000 and 2010. If the aggregated population growth rates below 0 in 2000 and 2010, we will exclude it. So basically, from this flow chart, we will get the functional urban areas in China. So this is the result. This map describes the whole pattern of the functional urban area in China. And for the gray area is the city purple. I mean, this is an administrative unit for Chinese cities. The red part is the periphery area, and the dark red part is the core areas. And we got this list. This is all the functional urban areas identified by whose population, total population above 400 million. Of course, the largest functional urban area in China is Shanghai. The total units are more than 200, and the total population is more than 200 million. Oh, sorry, it's 20 million. So we can see from this graph. Of course, for the total population, there's a slight difference between the total population rank size and the core population rank size. As you can see, Chengdu is the third largest metropolitan area in China for the total population, while for the core population, Guangzhou became the third largest one. This is the basic result. And I can show you a little bit more about the Megalopolis that we identified. The first one is the Pearl River Delta. Pearl River Delta is the largest megalopolis in China, which include the basic units includes 10 cities and 410 units. The total population is more than 500 million, and the core units is 288, and for the core population is 39 million. It's 39. Yeah. While for the second largest megalopolis in China is the Yangtze River Delta. This is the basic unit. This is basic numbers, as you can see.
Back to the previous map. Forgive my ignorance here, but is that Hong Kong?
Yeah, we do not include Hong Kong in our studies.
Why 10 cities, not 9?
Yeah, it's 10 cities. because we realized that, yeah, Qingyuan. And in Yangtze River Delta, 6 prefecture level cities are included: Shanghai, Suzhou, Wuxi, Changzhou, Huzhou, and Jiaxing. And the total population is 46 million. And for the core units, it includes 295 townships. And for the core population is more than 32 million. And also, this is the Beijing, Tianjin, Megalopolis. It includes 3 prefecture level cities. Besides Beijing, Tianjin, it also includes Langfang. This is the Chengdu, Chongqing, and also Shandong, Henan, Hebei. We realized there is some interesting. This is the Xingtai, Handan, Anyang, and Hebei. They are totally interconnected. But in some studies in China, it seems that people do not realize this. And also, this is the East Fujian and Chaoshan, Shantou, Chaozhou, and Jieyang. Okay, so this is our basic work. For the future work, we will keep monitoring the urban dynamics and functional urban areas development in China. And also, we will update the layouts and data for every 5 years. We will share the map on the Beijing City Lab. So before I finish the talk today, I want to talk a bit more about my visiting in Harvard. Firstly, I want to say thank you to my sponsor, Professor Peter Ball, and also the executive director, Wendy. Thank you for your help and support, and also the members in CGA. Besides, I want to, I remember, I have to say I get a lot from this visiting in Harvard, and I love Boston and really enjoy the life in Harvard. So I remember Wendy sent me the invitation at the beginning, and she wished me had a productive and rewarding experience in Harvard. I was kept thinking about, am I spent a productive and reward experience in Harvard? Yes, I published 6 papers during this time, and I also got promoted from assistant professor to associate professor. But I think more than that, this experience makes me to have more opportunity to communicate with with people from different background and different discipline, and I think it makes me to get at what I really want and what I should do. So, thank you. I'm very nervous, so thank you. Anyway, so all the questions will be welcomed. Yeah.
How do you, so how do you define the FUA unit again? So yeah, there's one, if you go back, there's one graph. That right there.
Yeah.
So the one before this, or no, or after, yes. It was the graph.
Going the other direction,
Oh yeah, I think.
in the other direction. Below, after the
Yeah,
after the map, after the
after
red,
that.
the red map.
There you go. Yeah, so the FUA units. Why Shenzhen? Why does that one only have 59, and yet it seems like right? If you look at the.
Yes, because Shenzhen has a very high density population, so the basic units is not. It's just
The unit is a count of
it's the
township.
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 The basic unit in this
Ah.
study is township. Yeah.
Yeah, you
So
can
it
have-
includes
42,000.
59 township in Shenzhen are included in the functional urban area.
Gotcha, okay.
Accurately is 街道，深圳
Yeah, 街道.
street level.
It's equivalent to township in rural area.
Yeah, the political.
Political, yeah.
Also consider Shenzhen was a very planned city. So these other cities like were organically like aggregating from these hundreds of different townships, but Shenzhen was like, we're gonna build a city right here. And they had a very high population from the beginning.
Very nice presentation, thanks. I'm curious about, I mostly do environmental work, so I'm also thinking about how all this extends to other things, and I think there's a lot of possibility. But I'm just curious about the census data. Do you feel like I have a few questions. One is, people are always in the US picking apart administrative data and saying, where is it good and where is it bad and where we undercount and overcount. And so do you, so I have a perhaps naive question about the census data you use to create your data set. How have people picked that apart? Is that generally considered good data? Is that strong? Is that undercounting in certain areas? Like, what do you feel about the source data based on what other people have said or analyzed? Do you have a sense of?
You mean the
Quality
yeah.
of census data.
Exactly.
Reliable
Is it
or not.
strong?
And,
Yeah,
and,
I think-
and no country's census data is perfect, so but each
Yeah.
one has its own.
I think all the data are kind of biased. So, but for the census data, and you can also use so much big data to approximate the human activities. Yeah, data, but I think that will be a more serious bias because I do some exploration on those data, and I think the census data in China is more. I mean, the quality is more good because it's more reliable. We do some comparison work between this population distribution and also some kinds of. I know Twitter are more common use in the United States. We do some Weibo. It's another kind of Twitter in China used to mapping the pattern and compare those maps. Quite similar. Yeah, so I think how to solve the problem that you mentioned, that the bias about the data, we could do some comparison to, yes, I think maybe update until now it's the best way. And that's why we're using the census data in this research.
Great. No, I can see. I'm also curious to know your sense of how unique this is now, what you've created.
Yeah.
This kind of very spatially resolved census data, and are there already thoughts for how other folks in the Beijing City Lab network will use that data? I mean, there were so many disciplines represented there, but do you already have a sense for folks who need that kind of data?
We share a lot of data in the website. And for this population data, actually, I mean, the township boundary is not open in China. So we got this boundary from a private source. So,
oh, really? Okay.
so, but for the county level, county level boundary or the county level population data, you can upload from the website.
Great, thanks.
So I have a comment and I guess a question. So my comment, I guess, is that to me, although you mentioned it at the beginning, to me the value of this project is that whereas the government will define administrative areas as cities or sub-districts, what you're doing is taking data and trying to define what the actual spatial characteristics of urban areas are based on considerations like population, transportation connections, and so on. And that the value there is that for planning and understanding what's going on as things rapidly urbanize, you need to have a clearer picture of what those spatial characteristics are than just some arbitrarily drawn administrative boundary. So that's my comment. And then the question, I guess, follows up on Gary's question, which is in terms of applying what you've done to other kinds of research, what do you see as the way in which these new spatially discovered functional urban areas can be used to contribute to city planning on regional scales, for example, dealing with things like climate change and environmental issues of commuting times? Is that part of the agenda of Beijing City Lab, or what you're going to do when you go back?
Yes, I hope the result can be adopted by the government in China for those urban studies and also the policymakers. As I mentioned before, there is quite a confusion about those concepts that used in China. And also for those people who doing some urban studies in China. Because this is totally very complicated. Even for those Chinese people, they are very confused. Yeah. As you can see, there are so many terms, and it's very difficult to tell them apart. But for the urban cluster in China, you can see there is no clear boundary for each urban cluster. It's just we can just map a cycle in this picture. But of course, local government will be happy to be involved in this planning, and they all declare we are affiliated to this urban cluster. But actually, I think the urban cluster, how to delineate the urban cluster, we should be based on the actually socioeconomic activity, also the socioeconomic flows that occur among those cities. So that's why we're doing this. I think the functional urban area is the first step. And the second step, we can, as I showed in this, this is the basic unit. We call the metropolitan area, just like in the United States. And for a big scale, we can figure out the metropolitan coordinating region for China and even the Megalopolis. That we will have a dialogue with the Western countries. We also have a very, I think it's very big population and units for those urban cluster and metropolitan areas.
So those data will be shared as well as just the reports, or in other words, shape files representing
I will share those data to CGA.
and then the definitions of each of these units and their populations and so on.
Yeah, I can show those.
Because those could be updated periodically.
Yeah.
Based on reality. That's the advantage of this rather than waiting for administrative designations.
Yeah.
Okay.
One question, maybe you have looked into the mapping economic clusters in the US project that is by Professor Michael Porter at the Harvard Business School. I don't know whether you have. but I think it's really closely related to your work. What he's doing is there's already these metropolitan areas or economic units defined in the U.S. And he, I believe, is using maybe county or sub-county level units. But what he understands, trying to understand, is the economic connection, not so much of population or population density, but the business sectors where the upstream manufacturer, for example, connects to the downstream production. And for example, like in the Boston area, the universities is one type of business activity, and then the research, the startups, the hospitals, right? The medical study versus the medical service. And then in say LA area, again, university is driving entertainment business, Hollywood, or so Detroit, manufacturer, steel to car parts, supplies. So this type of connection gives each economic region a definition of that clustering definition, and then see how close they're connected together. It goes through administrative boundaries. It goes through even country boundaries, because like Seattle and Vancouver are probably more connected than any other part of the U.S. cities. It would be an interesting comparison to see whether you can incorporate the Chinese economic activities into the definition of the functional area.
Thanks.
Okay, well, thanks again, Kang. Great. Let's see, let me stop this broadcast.
Are you turning?
Oh, yeah, let me just
Yeah,
stop that.